The final week before the fantasy playoffs. Everything we saw in week 14. That's what we're talking about today on Stealing Bananas. I'm Ben Gretch. You can find the Stealing Signals newsletter, bengretch.substack.com. With me, as always, is Shawn Siegele. You can find all his great work over at RotoViz. Shawn, kind of another crappy day of football. Some low scores. Couple really fun games. I'm really excited for the playoffs. We're in this era of really good defense and the good quarterbacks and the good offenses. You see it in the Bengals Bills. They can win against these defenses. They have some answers. I think the way that the ways that defenses play now, the more aggressive styles they play, can really attack the mid-level QBs and certainly the lower levels. And you can see some really bad offense. Maybe that's always been the case in the NFL, but I think maybe more so than ever. We've been talking about sort of the haves and have-nots for a long time, but offenses have gotten a little better. Even some of those mid-level offenses are able to find answers. It was really cool to see a couple of the good games, and I'm excited when we get to see all the best teams, sort of playing each other. It's a bummer, obviously, what happened with Daniel Jones. We should talk about that, but that's a team that I was excited to see as upper mid-level team, what they could do in the playoffs. Obviously, puts a huge damper on that. Packers-Bears was the last game I just watched here tonight, Shawn, before we went live, and that was a really, really fun one. Packers-Bears was the last one I just watched before we went live here, and that was a really fun one between two playoff teams. So I think we got some fun football ahead of us, but we still have to watch some of these bad teams that struggle sometimes too.
Ben, I've told you that I have some of these teams on the a soft do not watch list, but I had some time today. Got through basically everything, and I guess I'm not sure what you're talking about here. I mean, we're looking at a day where the Cleveland Browns, one of the best defenses in the NFL, goes out and has their quarterback throw for 364 yards and 3 touchdowns, lights up the Tennessee Titans, and they still lose. I mean, what could be more fun than that, right? We got massive Harold Bannon performance. We had Tyjae Spears looking fantastic, getting all of his plays called back. We had Tony Pollard going 25 for 161 and 2. Hopefully people weren't playing against him. I know you were.
Yeah, I was. You didn't mention that JJ McCarthy came out and threw. Sorry. You haven't seen. That's the one game you haven't seen yet.
I didn't have time for.
Well, it was a joke what I was about to say. So anyway, that game was a farce. Seattle and Atlanta was a farce. You said, what was I talking about? The Jets offense, as soon as Tyrod Taylor went out, was a farce. We
get more. Offense. Well, of course that was a farce. Zach Wilson is the backup to the backup. You just glossed right over Jerry Jeudy going 376-1. And to that point in the game when he catches this 60-yard touchdown, I was just watching for Harold Fannin and the defenses and the weather. I'd forgotten that Jerry Jeudy was on the team.
This might be the first week that I didn't have him started somewhere. I've still been playing him with some regularity for the last couple weeks, and we finally caught him off all our teams, mostly because you wanted to avoid the embarrassment of, if we were near the top of the leaderboard in the sprint and FFPC and anyone saw.
I'm not remotely embarrassed about it. I'm livid.
You're we can't have Jerry Jeudy on a roster. It'll be devastating for our egos. And then he goes for a 60-yard touchdown.
Yeah, no, this was pure tactics. I'm happy for Jerry Jeudy. He caught.
Is he on our dynasty team? He's
well, of course he is, because he's going to have a good season again next year, right? There are only so many passes you can drop when you're constantly wide open and you are employed by an NFL team. Dylan Sampson, he might have gotten us that main event victory if we had played him today on our. Then we have a team that is in the main event championship, needs AJ Brown to score 24 tomorrow. That is the case because Blake Corum scored 26 against us today. That team, because of injuries to our 2 starters, actually has Kyle Monangai and Jaleel McLaughlin playing. Dylan Sampson would have been good for that one. This game here, Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, the guys who for much of last prospect season, not in the heat of prospect season, but during the college season, what have you, a year ago today, say, were the guys who are expected to go number 1 and number 2 in the NFL draft. this wasn't the worst ever day for them, although Cam Ward's line in the victory still looks pretty questionable. And then Ben, again, the Seattle game may have been a farce, but I'll tell you the truly hard to deal with thing, which is that there's even a question about the MVP is. If Jackson Smith-Njigba is not the NFL MVP, then you just need to change the label of the award to quarterback award, because Jackson Smith-Njigba has been the best player in the NFL, and it's not close. There are no other competitors. 7 for 92 and 2 today on another day where Sam Darnold really didn't have anything else.
One of my
Rashid Shaheed actually getting a little bit involved today.
Yeah, he looked good. One of my favorite announcer quotes today that I took down was on a replay from Moose Johnston after JSN hit on a crosser, and then he would hit on another crosser 2 plays later and shed a tackle and walk into the end zone. And Johnson, they start to show the replay, and he's just talking about sort of the release, and then he kind of like cuts himself off and is like, and look at that separation just right from the get-go. And he just keeps extending it as that route continues. And he's like describing this image of JSN running across the field. And as he's moving to the middle of the field, just running away from, I think it was AJ Barner, and I mean, the throw's like a half step behind him. I mean, it creates so much room for Sam Darnold to throw to. And then they did the same thing from the right to the left 2 plays later, like I said, and Jason catches it and sheds the defender and steps into the end zone. Very good day from him. Nearly had another touchdown in the back of the end zone on a 3rd down early on, but was out of the back of the end zone. Caught the pass, was unable to keep his feet in. But yeah, he looked really good. The reason I called that a farce is Kirk Cousins just started. I mean, because I had the under in that game, and Kirk Cousins just started turning the ball over and giving away free short fields, and they ended up game ended up going over by I think 1.5 after there was only 4 field goals in the whole first half. They get a kick return touchdown to start the second half, and then Cousins starts giving up all these short fields, and then Mike McDonald's like, well, I might as well let Sam Darnold throw to JSN a little bit because it's working right now. We'll get him some passing touchdowns that'll make him feel better. But he looked like he's seeing goats again. Like last week's issues carried over to this week for the whole first half. Darnold was really struggling. But that was not my worst beat, by the way, at Stealing Lines this week. I got to tell you that the Denver Broncos, I took a -7.5, and people will say, well, hey, you take 7.5. That's your own fault. You go over a touchdown. That half a point's going to really kill you sometimes. When they kicked a field goal to go up 17 with 3:56 remaining, it didn't even cross my mind that it was possible that the Raiders would backdoor this. The Raiders travel 6 plays, 65 yards, and score a touchdown with Kenny Pickett. Still hadn't really crossed my mind. There's only 2 minutes left. The Broncos travel down the field. They get to a 4th down. They're in field goal range. They could kick a field goal and go up 13. Doesn't really make a difference to go from 10 to 13. It would help me. But they try to run the ball. They don't convert the 4th down with a minute left. But okay, that was the first point where I was like, okay, this might actually happen. But you still have Kenny Pickett at quarterback, and he's got to get up in a field goal range or whatever. He completes some passes, trying to complete a pass to Tyler Lockett. The clock is running. There's 4 seconds left. The game is over. And a Broncos player swats the ball out of Tyler Lockett's hands, gets called for a delay of game, stops the clock, and Pete Carroll's like, hey, we're in Vegas. It's a 10-point differential right now. The spread was 7.5. I know I don't have time to do an onside kick and a Hail Mary, but why don't I just kick the 46-yard field goal and make it a 7-point differential? That's the worst bad beat I've ever had. It was brutal. The delay of game. The game's over. What are you doing? Even the announcer's like, what an absurd thing to do. Like, what are you doing? It didn't matter.
The defender was like, we're going to win either way. Why would you not slot the ball away? It was fun.
I mean, just absolutely absurd. Absolutely absurd. Anyway, you wanted to talk about the Titans and Browns, I think, was the game you wanted to lead off with?
Well, while you're there with the Broncos, we have an efficient, if unimpressive, game from Bo Nix. 31 for 38, moves the ball down the field. Doesn't have as many drops in this game as he has for most of the season. Broncos came into this game leading the NFL in drops. We did unfortunately have some little Jordan Humphrey targets, which is going to make it a little bit more challenging for Pat Bryant to get where we'd like him to be.
Were you not aware that when they re-signed him, they were going to definitely throw him 3 balls?
Well, I mean, it's another thing of being aware. It's like I don't like anything about this.
That's Sean Payton's like favorite thing in the world, right there. 3 Lil Jordan Humphrey targets for 27 yards.
And you think about how they built this offense in the offseason and talking about the mismatch ability of guys like Evan Ingram and Marvin Mims. They combined for 3 targets. So that part was interesting. We did get a very exciting RJ Harvey game, even though it doesn't jump out, right? He gets the 17 carries. You like to see that. Only 4.4 yards per carry today. But Ben, I mean, this was a little bit like some of the Bashal Tutin plays early in the year where you're like, okay, at some point, this is going to be a huge deal. There was a play in this game where Harvey was caught by a shoestring on what would have been a long score. There were 3 or 4 plays where he put people on the ground. There were plays where he got knocked back like 5 yards because of incredible hits from the Las Vegas Raiders, kept his feet, restarts, and on one key play goes and gets, I mean, he takes a hit with 1 yard to go for the first down. That may have been the hardest hit that I've seen anybody take this season, perhaps outside of the hit that Rashee Rice took in the Sunday night game. He gets knocked back like 3 yards, stays on his feet, like just completely defies gravity, has both feet down, never even stumbles, and then sprints
runs for the first down.
Down.
Right as he caught the ball in the flat, he got hit by Jamal Adams. And the announcers are like, hey, this is why you got to wrap up. And Jamal Adams is like, I'm known for crushing people. Like, that's the only thing that I'm known for. I've never had to wrap anyone up when I hit him that hard. I don't know how. I mean, Harvey's contact balance is really good. This is how he had the really high missed tackle force rate numbers in his prospect profile in college. He was doing that in the hole up the middle in this game, which is something we have not necessarily seen a lot from him. He's kind of like has a unique style when he's running up the middle. He's kind of like almost stumbling around a little bit, but
it's just that his cuts are so sharp that sometimes he looks off balance. He's got the speed.
Right. He's always super on balance through contact. I mean, that's the thing. I wasn't trying to say he looks off balance. It looks like he's stumbling, right, but he's so on balance.
And as the speed of the NFL game slows down for him, it gets really exciting. 6 catches in this game. It's not a huge number, right? But when you're talking about them spreading the ball around, 6 catches for Cortland Sutton, 4 for Pat Bryant. We mentioned Humphrey. You have 2 for Adam Troutman, 2 for Adam Prentice. You know, just the 3 there for Troy Franklin. I don't know that we'll see it yet. He has the play where
he's funny.
Right. Doesn't have possession early enough to get the first down.
Sean and I were talking before the games and setting our lineups and talking about potentially playing Franklin, and then I was kind of making fun of Franklin a little, and your line was, it's the thing where, you know, the complaints about him in the combine drill, the gauntlet or whatever, like every time you see him throwing a target, there's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of like, you understand what that was.
Poor Troy.
He's a little bit uncoordinated or something.
Yeah, the Broncos were supposedly embarrassed by their performance against the Raiders in the previous game offensively, which they should have been. It was much more embarrassing, say, than having Jerry Jeudy on your fantasy lineup. That's kind of where it goes on the embarrassment scale. Supposedly they were going to come out and really show it today. It was all right. They win this game easily. Geno Smith does get knocked out, as you mentioned. Kenny Pickett going in there. Another game where they only get the 5 targets to Brock Bowers. He does score again, but this has been the opposite of last season, where last season Brock Bowers, unstoppable, doesn't score touchdowns. This year, no volume, scores touchdowns left and right.
It's mad.
2026, both things together, regardless of QB, they're going to have an entirely different coaching staff. Whether or not the Raiders franchise makes good choices on what that is, still up in the air.
They have such a hard time just getting the high success rate plays, which you're trying to get in the modern NFL. And it's every single time Bowers. I mean, you like me are just watching Brock Bowers, I'm sure, when the Raiders have the ball, because there's no one else on the team. I mean, Ashton Genty gets the ball sometimes, and that's exciting too, but there's no one else on the team literally worth even looking at. Bowers will be lined up in the slot. Okay, great, smart. You got him, he's not in an inline position. You got him spread out wide. And there'll be plays where there'll be plays where he gets a lot of attention, but there'll be plays where he has room, he has space. And you're like, why is he not just running the little quick out that Travis Kelce has run 9,000 times in his career? And you just throw him the quick completion, and let him get the catch and run. They'll come down and crash on him, but he's going to catch that every single time. And I mean, at a minimum, you're getting 5-6 yards. And then there's the situations where he breaks the tackle and, you get a first down for free.
It's a little bit like watching a Shane Waldron offense where the guy runs the first part of the route and is wide open. And then you're thinking the target's about to come. And then you realize the second part of his route is going to take him directly into where all the defensive players are standing. And you're thinking, I don't like that.
Yeah. Yeah, like half the time when he does the little like out and ups, but like a lot of them are just like they have him running these straight verticals out of the slot, and I'm like, why is he the guy running off the defenders? Why isn't Dante Thornton and Trey Tucker the ones running the vertical routes, and then he's running these horizontal breakers and those things that the stat guys have been talking about are really great for earning volume. There's so many plays where he's got a cushion on the line and he's running straight downfield and he goes at it 100 miles an hour. But you're like, why? Like, why is Brock Bowers your like? And if he is going to go straight downfield, throw him a deep ball. That's how they got the touchdown early. I was like, great. They put one up for him. Let him go win a ball. I don't know. Drives me nuts.
Then you mentioned Joe Burrow versus Josh Allen. Through a series of offseason trades, that is what the Tactical Turtle, our FFPC RV Triflex Dynasty team has. In season, they'd have to give up some other pieces in order to get that. So not every piece of the starting lineup at this point is perfect. But going into this game, you're seeing all the snow and you're thinking to yourself, with two good quarterbacks, the snow is their friend. The defenders do not know how the plays are going to break. The offense does. The defense will not be able to cut. We're going to see some serious scoring. And we get 4 touchdowns for Joe Burrow, in part because T. Higgins catches better in the snow. We get 3 touchdowns plus 78 rushing yards from Josh Allen. The only unfortunate part about this game is that the Bengals were going to make a push to win the AFC North. And then it's got some bad, again, you think about all the positives of playing in the snow, but then a little bit of bad luck. Joe Burrow not able to fully grasp one of his passes, underthrows it right to the defense for a pick 6. Then on the very next play, you get a batted ball that is picked. That changed the game that the Bengals were not dominating, but certainly had the much better of it to that point.
Yeah, it seemed like they were going to go on and win this. Buffalo had gone 12 plays, 70 yards, and fumbled at the 2-yard line in a 21-18 game. The Bengals drove all the way back down the field and got the touchdown. The fumble went into the end zone, touchback, but the Bengals responded with an 80-yard drive, not a 98-yard drive or anything, but an 80-yard drive on 12 plays. And that pushed the game to 28-18 in the early fourth quarter. You're thinking, okay. And actually, it took long enough that it pushed into the middle of the fourth quarter. And Josh Allen responded with a 4-play, 68-yard, 1-minute touchdown drive in a 28-18 game that I think was one of the most impressive things of the whole day. So often we see teams not get aggressive enough there. And the understanding that, like, it's not just that you need 2 scores. You can't just move down slowly and score in a way that leaves just enough time for you to get that, like, 3 and out and then score again. Every coach and every quarterback, it seems like, basically because of the coaches, it seems to always be doing the math of, if everything goes right on every possession from this point forward, how can we win this game? What the Bills did here, what Josh Allen did here, and obviously everyone's trying to score on 4 plays and 68 yards, and they love to score quickly. That's part of the difficulty, obviously. But what they did in going quick and getting very aggressive was understand, even after we score, the Bengals can score again. There's still a lot left. We're down 2 possessions, and we need to extend the game as much as possible. That's all you need to be thinking about. Extend the game, extend the game, extend the game. They throw vertically right away, 16-yard completion, then a short pass for 12 yards, an incomplete deep pass, and then Allen scrambles. 4 straight dropbacks, pushing the ball downfield, and then Allen scrambles on one of the 4th time pushing it down, gets loose for a 40-yard touchdown run. They're able to score in 4 plays, which is before the interception that you referenced, the 2 interceptions, but the pick 6 where Buffalo then takes back over and takes the lead. Part of the reason for that pick 6 does go back to this drive where, if they don't score in a minute and 11 and the Bengals take back over with 7.5 minutes left, only up 3. Say they take the Bills take 4 minutes or something to go score like the Chiefs would, because the Chiefs can never do anything fast, then, you would be 3.5 minutes left or whatever it is when the Bengals take back over, 4.5 minutes left. Maybe the Bengals are running their offense a little bit differently at that point. Maybe the interception doesn't happen, what have you. Anyway, I thought that was a really good drive and kind of the pivotal point on the Bills side, probably more so than the interception, which, obviously, as you said, was a tough play.
Yeah, when you put the pressure on the opponent by creating more time. Now, granted, as you mentioned, there aren't too many teams that can get that 40-yard run from their quarterback. But if you can spread people out in the snow, it's even better than if you can spread people out in normal circumstances. You have some pretty meaningful lanes to run in. And you don't know that you're going to get those picks, right? And the very next drive that the Bengals had that did not end in a fluky pick. You had 2 fluky picks. They score a touchdown again, get it back to 39-30.
And even the first one with the pick 6, they had moved all the way into Bills territory, right? And that and the touchdown drive after, they were moving the ball at will.
Yeah, Joe Burrow looked fantastic in this game. He's been not criticized necessarily, but when you look at Chase Brown, some of the things that he struggles with, I think it's important to mention some of the things that he does extremely well. He is able to get into the end zone as a runner in this game, where he averages less than 2 yards per carry. Samaje Perine goes 6 for 31 on his. Perine obviously played a lot, obviously, but he plays a lot as the pass protecting back, but also then can get downhill in some of those formations. But Chase Brown maybe had the catch of the day. We talked a lot before the 2024 season about how hard he had worked as a receiver. He makes a sensational catch where the play takes quite a long time to develop. Joe Burrow rolls out. He throws one of these passes into the corner edge of the end zone, front pylon. The review overturns it being short. That's how close the play was. And as it originally develops, you're thinking this has to be to a receiver, but I kind of think that's where Chase Brown ran. And then as soon as everything, the guys all get up, you see it as Chase Brown. Now, unfortunately, he did have what would have been a sensational second touchdown reception that he's not quite able to hold on to in this game. That unfortunate for him there. But what he's giving the Bengals, what he will continue to give them. And you think about how the Bengals are built, where their defense struggles. The defense played very well right up until the pressure in the fourth quarter, right? You had that scramble, the ability to get away there from Allen. They more or less kept James Cook in check. This seemed like a game where he might go for 200 yards and 4 touchdowns without the defense being able to cut necessarily. You get both Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. That part pretty entertaining in terms of where Allen was actually able to go with his passes. No wide receiver gains more than 21 yards of Gabe Davis. Stark contrast, obviously, to the Bills focusing on Jamar Chase, taking him away. Chase in the midst of a little bit of a rough stretch here. T. Higgins responds with the 6 for 92 and 2. He takes a really tough hit in this game, but does not leave.
Several tough hits. That's I'll let you finish.
Well, Higgins, one of the guys who drops a lot of passes, but on the other end of it is certainly able to make the circus catch. When you are able to make these catches either in situations where the ball isn't thrown that well, but you're gigantic, you have the long arms on top of it, and you can stick a one-handed catch, or you're willing to take these hits, come back and make these plays later in the game. That's going to, but it's not. We know that T. Higgins is a highly paid player. He's a huge star on the team. But when you think about the drops that he's gone through at different times, this type of talent where you don't see these types of plays from anyone, right? That's going to buy you a lot of extra leeway when some of these unfortunate things do happen.
I had a hard time with the way that the T. Higgins concussion thing, he missed a lot. This is his first game back from a concussion. And he slammed his head to the turf. You said he took a hit. He took 3 extremely hard hits to the head. The first one, He banged his head on the back of his head on the boundary, came up pointing at his head, at his helmet, and they went and they checked him out and they cleared him and he came back. That was late in the second quarter. I put in my notes, he's probably out for the game after he recently had another concussion. We know all the stuff about head injuries and especially the damage that can be done by multiple head injuries in quick succession. He did miss a game, so he was out for 2 weeks since his last concussion. But I don't know how he returned. And then right before the half, he returned like right away. Right before the half, he landed again on the back of his head really hard. And then they said at half, he stayed in the locker room extra long. And the halftime reporter was like, we'll have to get more information on that. I'm not sure what that's about. Well, I was like, it's about the fact that he's smashed his head on the turf twice in a row in his first game back from concussion. Then he hit his head on the turf on a similar play a few snaps later on a third down. That was one before half. Later, he caught a key third down conversion, got pulled down, hit his head again. And he's so tall that every time he's hitting the ground, they're pulling him like backward or he's falling backward when he jumps up. He comes down and his back of his head hits so hard. When he came up from that tackle, he again came up reaching for his helmet, was squeezing his hands in frustration. Like he took another hit to the head. He's going to have to leave the game. He clearly wanted to stay in the game. They all knew how big of a game this was for their season. We know about how like offensive and defensive linemen get micro concussions or whatever it is, like from all the little tiny hits all throughout a game and how that's caused a lot of the great linemen in a lot of the eras to have like shorter lifespans into their adulthood or their post-playing days, I guess is what I meant to say there. Anyway, this was an incredible football game. I had a really hard time with it. That was the one thing watching this game. I found myself mostly just concerned about the brain health of one player for like a lot of the game. And then he ends up having a one-handed TD catch at the end of the game. So maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. Maybe he got checked out. Maybe all the protocols are fine and he was fine. I think it's tough in the first game back from a concussion to have a guy pointing at his own head multiple times immediately after the hits and then talking his way back into the game somehow. I mean, he's basically chucked himself out when he's done that on the field.
I certainly appreciate the sentiment of being concerned and feeling like we should be extremely cautious with all of these. I guess my only thought is that we're not really sure, what's taking place down the field. We don't know what the conversations are. We don't know what the gesture to the head necessarily means. Other than, I mean, it's in some cases, you're going to be calling for a penalty. In some cases, you are concerned.
No, he was pointing at his own head. Both the times I'm talking about, he was pointing at his own head very clearly. I don't think he was asking for a penalty. He was like, I hit my head. He was hitting it on the turf.
And yeah, but there's just a lot of gray area with any of these collisions that cause a great deal of pain and yet are not causing the types of concussions where obviously players would be gone. We see the ones where the players are clearly knocked out and those players don't return. We'll have to see how things evolve, how this story transpires. I was surprised that Rashee Rice was allowed to continue in the night game because he looked to have a moment where, not necessarily that he was out even, but just that the hit had stunned him, which is a pretty good indication that they need to take a look. And again, it's the thing of then do we follow the protocol? And if the player clears, then we put him back in. There may be better things they can do with the protocol as things go forward. Certainly, I think in some of the cases, the players know that if you've been stunned and you have been down for a moment, if you don't get back up and charge back out as though you're fine, it'd be an unfortunate thing if we discover as things go along that the players have strategies in place for avoiding the health protocol and essentially knowing that if you find yourself stunned, you better get up and sprint back to the huddle and be
That's a great point.
Kind of more a thing of, because you're trying to play it off potentially. mean, these guys all want to play. They all want to compete. Rashee Rice doesn't want to leave the game at that point. You don't want to give the Texans the joy of having injured another player. And, so you're going to get back in the huddle. You're going to act like I was just frustrated that I didn't make the catch. It was a big play. Right. And so it's tricky. I do think that we have to follow the protocols as they currently are. And if the players are clearing, then we have to allow them back on the field.
Yeah, I think it's a great point that of all my criticism there, the part where him pointing at the head should immediately rule him out or something. It's a good point that shouldn't be the case, because we don't want to incentivize players to not say, hey, you're right. We don't know what's going on down there. For all I know, T. Higgins is saying, look, I had a concussion recently. I banged my head. I want to get checked out or whatever. And then they check him out and then they decide he's good. I mean, who knows? But I do think, the stuff we know about the micro concussions, a lot of that kind of thing, there's probably some gray area in these spots. Look, the fact that he was able to perform an incredibly challenging one-handed catch at the end of the game on a bomb, that takes a lot of skill, a lot of dexterity, a lot of focus, a lot of things that you probably can't do if you actually have a concussion. So I'm probably the one that's wrong here. I mean, I was watching this game like nervous for T. Higgins. Is the only reason I brought it up. I didn't mean to sort of like hijack everything, but it was tough to watch because he kept hitting his head. It happened like 3 times really hard on the turf, and you don't love to see that when a guy comes the first game back from concussion. I mean, that's tough, but good game from him. I mean, huge game from him. 6 catches, 92 yards, 2 touchdowns, had the touchdown on a vertical pass early and then another one late. He was the star of this game for Cincinnati. Jamar Chase was very quiet. You mentioned Chase Brown had the really good play, the running back air yards, and gets another shot. We always love to see that. We've talked about it a lot on the show this year, that's been a big way to attack some of what defenses are doing is use them in the pass game, throw to them. James Cook has a long reception on a leak play, a little bit of more of a catch and run, your typical running back target, not a running back air yards play, but 27-yard catch for him, 80 yards receiving. Like you said, he was getting into space all over the place early on in this one. Dawson Knox has a big game out of nowhere, like a career high game. They were saying on the broadcast, I think. This was a really fun one. But let's talk about that. This wasn't the other snow game, but it was a cold game. I want to talk about the Bears and Packers game a little bit. We got Jaden Reed back. It was nice to see him play. He got 3 touches on the first drive. They do a quick jet motion to him, throw to him on the first third down. They threw to him on the first play of the game, and they did a jet motion. Then they threw to him on the first third down as well. He caught 4 passes, got 2 carries, 53 yards. Exciting usage for him. Christian Watson was the big number 1. 4 downfield targets, has 2 long touchdowns, 1 a downfield shot, 1 a slant that he takes to the house. Green Bay passing game to me looks like it's going to be Watson and Reed sort of as the main focal points going forward. They're always going to be spread out a little bit, kind of like we were joking with the Broncos. You were talking about Adam Prentice getting targets and all of that. When you look at the Green Bay box score, you're always going to see, somebody like, what is it, Josh Wiley or Weil? Is this one Weil? There's another Wiley on KC. I don't know how to say these guys' names. John Fitzpatrick. Bo Melton catches a 45-yard touchdown. He was playing cornerback for most of the year, but he's also a former receiver. Romeo Doubs, no catches because their good receivers are in the game now. Christian Watson and Jaden Reed, the main guys going forward?
I think so. Ben, this was a crazy game, kind of the way you described it there in terms of what Green Bay is doing and what they can do. One of the things that I was attempting in the 2025 season was to structure things so that I could also, let me take a step back and just say that over the last month, I've written some sort of outlandish articles for the site. And last week's article coming out of Thanksgiving did the second half of the countdown, right? So we have the final 16 teams and everything about them. Also, before that, I picked every game the entire rest of the season and broke down the highlight games. It wasn't the shortest, of every game. And
wait, when did this post last week? I missed it.
Yeah. No, it wasn't the shortest exercise to go through. Both parts of that, I think.
How did you do? How did you do this week? Did you get most of them right?
Well, in a moment, we'll go to the Steelers Ravens. I didn't get that game right, but I got the AFC North winner right, at least based on what we saw this week, which is it's going to be the Steelers. The Ravens are simply bad, which is one of the things I wrote about in the article. The other thing that I wrote here.
Time out. The Ravens win this game if it's officiated any reasonable way. This was the most like, oh, I wonder if, the guy who's like, oh, I wonder if Vegas had the fix-in on this one game of the year.
Ben.
The Aaron Rodgers reception was not a reception, and the Isaiah Likely touchdown was clearly a touchdown. You can't have both of those go against. And then the Ravens get the ball back and get called for 2 holds right away on the last drive. I mean, I actually don't do the conspiracy thing. I'm like hinting at it.
It's not conspiracy. It is horrible officiating.
It's
I think that those plays were actually okay. I don't think they were necessarily right, but I think they were okay. If on a scale of 1 to 100, I would put those plays in the single digits compared to the Jake Ferguson offensive pass interference on Thursday night.
Yeah, that was terrible.
Which would be like 99.
Okay, there's not that big of a gap. So the Isaiah Likely
Ben, there's that big of a gap.
Okay, I need to talk about that.
Interfered with, doesn't do any.
Yeah,
and
I hear you.
The Chiefs have had like 2 worse plays called against them in each of the last 2 weeks than anything in the Steelers-Ravens game. The Chiefs don't deserve to make the playoffs. I'm glad the Texans defeated them. And the Texans are my least favorite team, but they were also the team I ranked 3rd overall because the Texans at this point are flat out awesome, right? But come on.
So I want to talk about the plays. I want to give my perspective on the plays.
Okay.
The Aaron Rodgers reception, John Harbaugh, I think, hit on really well. When he talked about it after the game, he said that when a player is catching a pass, it's not just getting 2 feet down. He has to survive the ground. Rodgers needed to have possession of the ball through the ground, or we call it incomplete. If the ball gets jostled free, it's not just the moment he has his hands on the ball and a knee down, he's down. He has to finish the process of the catch. The ball got ripped away. If it would have landed, it would not have been a completion. It would have been an incompletion. There's no justification, especially for overturning that and calling it a completion, because Rodgers didn't complete any of the acts of a catch. He needs to have his knees down and do a third motion and all of that. So again, if the ball got pulled free and landed, they would have said he didn't have the ball long enough. But because the ball got pulled free and intercepted, they were like, well, it was caught by someone, and therefore Rodgers was the one who caught it first and was down. And that's sort of the logic. And it's so funny because there's a clear thing happening in the NFL. I am going to go conspiracy theory on this. There's a clear thing happening in the NFL where they're trying to sync up broadcast opinions with referee decisions. And I don't know if it's the referees are listening to the audio on the broadcast, and when they're
But then if we didn't have that, we would have had the additional egregious call of assisted replay giving the Texans a first down like a yard short when it was ruled correctly originally.
Right. That was a crazy one too. But it's fascinating. Whenever I hear a broadcaster say something that looks off to me, they'll come back and they'll still do it. And then there's this warm and fuzzy feeling you get as a viewer. You're like, well, I guess everyone knows the rules and I just don't know it. For years and years and years, the biggest reason we would see the issues on social media and people would have problems with the rules is you'd have the broadcaster saying this is wrong. And then the referees would, and then openly disagreeing with the referees in the field. And there's all this confusion. What is the actual rule? And I really do. This is like, it's not even it's that much of a conspiracy. I think the NFL has gone behind closed doors and said, we need what we're telling the audience to sync up with what we're actually calling on the field so that it's just, simple enough to understand, because we can't keep making it into different things and creating all this controversy. And then everyone's saying we don't even know what the rules are because it's killing our product. And I think what happened here is Tony Romo, who is like insane, was sitting there going, oh, I don't know if his knee was down. I don't know if his knee was down. He started saying that right away. And I'm like, Tony Romo, what are you talking about? Like, he's got to complete the process of the catch. He's only had possession for like a fraction of a second when his knee goes down, and then the ball gets ripped away. That's not a catch. Under any rule at any point in ever has that ever been considered a catch. He did not possess the ball long enough, but Tony Romo didn't know that. And so he starts saying, the first thing that pops into his mind, like he always does. And then they end up calling it.
The whole reason this doesn't work is because the rules don't work, and because they're described differently every time.
But that's what I'm saying.
Adjudicated differently every time. In some of the games, you have to catch the ball, take 15 steps, and make 5 jukes in order for it to count. And in some of the games, all you have to do is catch the ball. And if you do catch the ball and then fumble it, it's going to be a fumble, or it's going to be incomplete, what have you. They haven't fixed this yet. I don't think that this was even necessarily that bad of a call from the perspective of they don't have the rules right.
But this
and they
is
do
why
it differently
I think,
every time.
No, I don't think they do it differently every time. The reason I think this one was a little bit weird is when the official came out to explain why he was overturning it, like you're saying, he explained it in a way that didn't make any sense. Like, it didn't make sense to him. Like, he had been told on the headset to say something, and he was like, I don't know what I'm saying. But anyway, that one I think John Harbaugh nailed in his post-game conference. The likely one, I understand why they overturned it, because they say 2 feet down and a football move. I have said for years that catches need to have a time element, not a football move. It's a stupid.
Then you got to get 3 feet down.
That's what it's become now, because that takes the place of a football move, and now they say it's 3. So what Isaiah Likely did is he caught the ball clearly in the air, came down 1 foot down, 2 foot down, and he's holding the ball away from his body.
What you have to do is immediately throw it.
If you would have reached towards something in any direction,
don't reach it, because you can get the ball knocked out as you're reaching. Toss the ball.
Just throw the ball.
We see that on some of the plays. I'm trying to think of the play today where we got that on one of the big scores.
So what I've always said is
tosses it away, because you know that you had control. If you had control enough to throw it somewhere else,
just throw it somewhere. See, that's what's absurd. And this is why I've said it's always should have been a time element, whatever. I know that would get a little too technical if we like threw a clock on the screen and said, did he have possession for 1.5 seconds or whatever the number was determined to be? But he gets both feet down and we're waiting. He was in the air and it's like long steps. We're waiting for this third long step to come down. He's clearly had the ball long enough to have made a football move. But you're
then
calling
the other thing is just that scoring a touchdown is by definition a football move. The play is over right now.
You're calling it a lack of a football move because he doesn't need to do anything with the ball and he's just holding it straight. He's had it long enough to have made a football move, but he hasn't done it yet because he's just holding the ball away from his body. It was the most absurd, like, I'm going to be a nerd and push my glasses up and say, well, you got to make a football move. And because he didn't, we need a third foot. You don't need 3 feet. You need 2 feet and a football move, which Rodgers did not have. And Isaiah Likely clearly had the ball long enough to do. Holding the ball away from his body should have been constituted as a football move. Absolutely a bizarre interpretation of the rules to overturn both of those. They overturned both of them as if they were clear and obvious. That's the problem I have. I don't think they can be overturned as clear and obvious. Those are very weird interpretations to me. I understand the interpretations.
The NFL doesn't use that standard.
They don't use that standard, and it pisses me off. That's the part that makes me the maddest. You have to be. That's the whole thing with review. It has to be clear and obvious. You have to stick to that part of it. All right, Sean, I'm done with my rant. I think the Ravens got absolutely screwed in this game, though.
I'll give you the likely one. I would like to point out the awesomeness of Arthur Smith, where they come in. I'm looking at Blair's advanced matchup tool that you can see every Saturday on the site. Ravens come in over the last 6. Obviously, Blair's got you looking at the most recent numbers so you can see how teams are evolving. The Ravens, one of the top defenses in passing yards per play, one of the top defenses in EPA per pass, one of the top defenses, or well above average in average separation allowed. By contrast, they are in the bottom 10 in rushing yards per play. They are the worst defense in explosive rate allowed. If you were thinking that today Kenneth Gainwell and Jalen Warren combined for 12 carries and Aaron Rodgers threw the ball 34 times. Well, that is what happened. DK Metcalf looked fantastic. 7 for 148, showing both the ability to get vertical and to run after the catch. It's so funny here, Ben, because we have Kenneth Gainwell used so frequently as a receiver. He is quite good as a receiver, and his touchdown run was also fantastic. He probably should have been used more at his previous stop. But the contrast with that is that Jaylen Warren, who they always like to talk up, we're going to use him more, he's really good. He actually is the epitome of what they supposedly want in terms of being a hard-nosed rushing team. One of the things you have to like the misdirect from Tomlin, where he's like, we've gotten away from what we do well. We've got to be tougher. We're going to do that by throwing the ball 34 times. Jaylen Warren, though, fantastic receiving back. It's unfortunate that he is not being able to generally show what he can do more than he can in this silly offense that Arthur Smith runs. He has a 38-yard receiving touchdown. Both of those guys get in the end zone here. Lamar Jackson still struggling, but Zay Flowers, finally. It's been a while. Zay Flowers, you want to talk about horrible calls. He has the long touchdown, I believe, a week ago, where there's a phantom offensive pass interference.
That was terrible.
Phantom offensive pass interferences left and right. Does the NFL not want points? Because you've got like 10 phantom offensive pass interference calls a week, which is flagrantly ridiculous when the one thing the NFL needs to make its product better is vertical passing.
Yeah, and Lamar, I was just reading your article and how bad you think the Ravens are. Lamar has looked bad since he's come back. He's looked unhealthy. I thought in that Black Friday game, he looked better, and he would have had 2 long touchdown passes if not for Isaiah Likely fumbling the ball going into the end zone and this phantom OPI, which is the way I've written it up. Everywhere I've written it up was that Lamar basically did have 2 long touchdown passes, just neither of them counted. In this game, I thought he regressed, especially early on from that Friday game. I thought he was struggling again early, and then he was looking a bit better later on. He got comfortable. Rashad Bateman drops a 3rd and 4 play from the 10-yard line right on his hands, and then Harbaugh decides to kick a field goal on 4th and 4 from the 10, down 11 to cut it to 8 with 13:46 left. It's just nonsense. You have to go for the TD. You probably need 2 touchdowns anyway. 8 is a coin flip away from a coin flip, as we always talk about. It's a coin flip, 2-point conversion away from a coin flip overtime. If you're thinking about it that way, you don't kick a field goal early in the 4th quarter when you're down 11 from the 10-yard line, and you only need 4 yards to go. But Bateman dropping that pass, probably with a walk-in touchdown. And then the next time they get down there, he does hit Likely and gets the TD. It gets overturned, and then they end up going on downs and turning it over on downs. But he did have a rushing TD, and I thought he looked better as a runner in this game as well. I thought Jackson looked good. Then we had the long Keaton Mitchell run as well, 55 yards around the edge, saw the speed. He kind of stumbled. It's kind of
one of the issues they're having here is that Derrick Henry is just not that good now.
Yeah,
he's still above average probably, but he's not what he was. The 25 carries to him in this game kind of hurt the Ravens, which there have been games this year. You look at his usage and you're like, it's Derrick Henry. How is he sitting for just massive chunks of time? This is why. But then right before this happened, I was telling the folks I was watching this game with that Keaton Mitchell is the most explosive. He's the best athlete at running back in the entire NFL, even more athletic than Jahmyr Gibbs. There are lots of numbers that back that up. He gets into the clear in this game and gets caught. And I'm like, everything I said is wrong. Jahmyr Gibbs, there's a 0% chance gets caught on that play. There's a 0% chance that Devon Achane gets caught.
Yeah.
He both stumbled and seemed like he ran out of gas on a 50-yard run.
I know. I think it's because he stumbled. He couldn't get back up to speed. That was a bizarre one. But yeah, Flowers look good. You mentioned the Warren and Gainwell stuff. The Ravens defense, the notes that you have in your piece about the Ravens defense, I think are fair, that they're probably not as good as this narrative that they got healthy and got really good. It's probably a little bit of a schedule mirage you wrote about as I was just reading it during our podcast. I think that's fair, and I think that's a reflection of what we saw. Aaron Rodgers was able to attack them downfield to Metcalf, a couple big completions. Now we can stop hearing about how they haven't completed a pass more than 20 yards in over a month. It's like They kept talking about this like I don't know. I feel like if they didn't make that a huge deal just because it's an Aaron Rodgers team, we would find this as a pattern for 4-game spans in other offenses like fairly frequently. Completing a 20+ air yard pass is not like the most common thing in the NFL anymore. Like it is somewhat rare. I think there's plenty of quarterbacks who go full games. They might complete some in the 10 to 20 range in the intermediate range, but they may not complete a ton 20+. Anyway, we got that, so we can stop hearing about it. They were even talking about it on the broadcast today. But we got to go back to that Packers game because we didn't finish the Bears. You were making some point about the Ravens, and I wanted to talk about the calls. You were saying the Ravens suck, and I want to talk about the calls. But we didn't finish talking about the Bears in that game. And Caleb Williams played really well, throws the late pick, but put them in a position to be where they almost had a chance to win that game. I thought that was a tough throw. At the same time, the play call is a rollout. They have a flat throw, like a shorter area throw. It's 4th and 1. The Packers defended that really well. They had multiple defenders there to stop what was, I'm guessing, what were Caleb's sort of reads there were a short, flat throw that was defended well, and then a run because it's 4th and 1. But that was also very well defended. So he had to take the vertical throw, which he had one-on-one coverage, but he's running to his left, and I think he's thinking flat throw or run, and then he's got to kind of reset running to his left and throw downfield, underthrows it, gets picked off. I like that he got that pass off and like read the play out and was like, I got to throw this up to the 50-50 guy. It's where the ball has to be. It's not a good physical throw, but he goes through the process. Anyway, everything else before that was fantastic. He struggled early. He threw a lot of incompletions early, but everything else up to that point was fantastic. He played really, really well.
Yeah, the first half was tough, right? You have the 5 drives, 4 punts, and a field goal. The field goal drive, the only one that lasts more than 5 plays. We continue to see this element with him where, and I wrote this in the piece a couple of weeks ago, and it's continued to be the case, that Caleb Williams' ability on the scrambles, the evasion rate on the scrambles is just off the charts, which is important because every other part of his game is basically a weakness. Now, this one was a little bit frustrating, I think, given that you knew the Green Bay Packers were not going to give up the running plays the way the Eagles did. And even though the final numbers look all right because Ben Johnson is just so absurdly good at designing the running game, and because especially Kyle Monangai, but certainly DeAndre Swift was fine from an efficiency perspective as well, and those backs are performing extremely well, right? You get Monangai was doing some of the same types of things without the explosiveness that we were talking about with RJ Harvey, where he took some massive hits, stayed on his feet, kept going. In most of those cases, it was the difference between losing a yard and gaining yards, so it doesn't really show up in the box score as being incredibly relevant for fantasy. But I mean, he probably gets benched, especially with whatever the mild injury he was dealing with to his ankle earlier in this week. If he doesn't fight through some of those plays, but you get the running backs more or less shut down in this game. Luther Burden ends up leading the way from a receiving perspective. He also gets a carry. That carry doesn't go anywhere. It's tough in part because you have some skepticism that DJ Moore is quite as bad as his season indicates. And certainly, again, this is a day where, you know, if you're not playing with the PPR, he put up negative points for you, 3 targets, 1 catch, -4 yards. I would have liked to have seen Luther Burden a little bit more involved. This is a really nice performance from Cole Kmet to where you sort of think, and the best throw of the day was to him.
Yeah,
right?
that was the play of
in
the year. That was incredible.
Yeah.
I had that a whole like paragraph on that. If you didn't get to it, I was going to make sure we circled back to it. But that was one where, again, he was moving to the left, Caleb, all the way to the sideline, throws it over the shoulder. Or was he moving to his right? He's moving to his right. But Kmet's ability to play that over the shoulder without going out of bounds was exceptional. Where he was positioned on the sideline. I mean, there's very good receivers who can't do that. That was awesome.
Because of the exact situation, Cole Kmet obviously is available in fantasy a lot. I think that if you're looking down the line, if you have a dynasty team where he's not rostered in some of these shallower leagues, you should probably pick him up. I mean, you and I were kind of talking about that for the last spot on our team. Again, not a huge dynasty day. The touchdown does go to Colston Loveland. That was a big play in the game for them as they're pulling back into this one. This is another kind of weird one where the Packers look really good and yet could have lost. And they just do this again and again and again. When I wrote them up, it was basically that the Packers are probably the best team in the NFL, right? They have the best mix of pieces. They have a quarterback who has some of the best advanced stats in the entire league. Now, one of the things I did note is that, especially from a fantasy perspective, they've actually had the easiest QB schedule, which makes the really run-heavy approach seem even more absurd, right? You're running into what's a fantastic quarterback schedule. That part is pretty frustrating. His numbers are great. You see when he gets the weapons back. I mean, Christian Watson just looks absolutely fantastic. But as you noted, I mean, those of us who are stashing Jaden Reed places and or have him on IR and dynasty leagues, all those types of things, this is still a game here where he didn't really score. And you have concerns that anybody other than Josh Jacobs and then maybe someone like a Christian Watson who can catch vertical passes, that you could ever really start them except in an emergency. And yet, when we're talking about 2 weeks from now, if it continues to develop down this path, I was surprised how concentrated, and I mean, say concentrated, it was 4 targets for Reed, it was 4 targets for Watson, but the deep targets that you need, and then it was the 2 additional touches for Reed. It's not great that is the feeling of concentration within the Green Bay offense outside of Josh Jacobs. And yet it did give you the sense that this offense with those 2 guys could suddenly become electric the way that was down the stretch of the 2023 season. I mean, you got to go back a decent amount of time there, but you look at those pieces. This is a game where Josh Jacobs was fine, as he is usually fine. He gets in the end zone near the end, as he almost always gets in at some point during these games. But you have the 25 passes for Jordan Love and the 26 total runs. Now, one of those is a Love, I believe, Neal probably. That in a game against an underrated Chicago Bears team. And I say underrated, like, how can they be underrated when they came in 9-3? They play this good game here. But they were certainly the heavy underdog.
Yeah, they were 7-point underdogs. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that catches up with the development that the Bears have had and Ben Johnson's ability to scheme around both the incompletions of Caleb Williams and some of their defensive weaknesses. This Bears team is very, very good. They had a chance to really put their stamp on the NFC North today. Didn't quite do it. And it's tough for them in the same way that a little bit more exaggerated version of what the Colts were dealing with even before the Daniel Jones injury. And then the Daniel Jones injury obviously just amplifies it almost to infinity. But where the Bears, every loss for the Bears, when you look at what the Lions are doing and where the Packers are and how the NFC West has these teams, it's still pretty problematic for them even to make the playoffs.
Before we go there, I do want to say I think Reed's going to get air yards. I think that's the way I would think of that. But anyway, because I mean Watson gets they throw downfield to Dobbs occasionally. They were doing it with Golden a lot early. I think for he's had some injury issues, and for whatever reason they haven't necessarily gone back to that. Bo Melton gets a deep shot in this game. They went vertical to Luke Musgrave in this game. They want to be vertical regardless. Go back to the play that Reed got hurt on. I was
frustrated that Musgrave didn't get the reception on that one because that was a fantastic effort.
That was a great play, and I thought it should have been a catch too. That was weird.
I mean, the replay never makes any sense.
Yeah. The play that Reed got hurt on way back in whatever it was, week 1 or week 2, was also like a 45-yard completed touchdown that was called back to a hold. It was like the most annoying thing if you had him in your lineup, because we did in some of our teams. It's like, at least we could have got the 10 points for the long touchdown. I do think he's going to get some air yards. You pivoted over to the Colts, right?
Yeah, every week features some frustrating things. I mean, it was tough today to see HN go out, even though it sounds like, at least as we record, that he's probably okay. The note there was that supposedly he could have gone back in if they had needed him, but he was, on the path to having a 40-point game. But I mean, with the Colts, so there are a lot of things involved here, right? Number one, it's a dagger for them for this season. Number two, it's a dagger for Daniel Jones as he goes into this offseason. It would have had a lot of options, and certainly for the Colts as they probably try and bring him back and build around him. It's a dagger for Jonathan Taylor managers now for the sprint for winning your championship in FFPC week 14, if you were doing that. Certainly if you were in a home league, you're now very frustrated that you don't have nearly the same upside for Taylor as you look to the 15, 16, 17. If you have him in the sprint, you're very frustrated at 15, 16, 17. The fact that we got some decent plays from Riley Leonard is similar to getting some decent plays from Tyler Shook or from Shedeur Sanders, where it's probably not sustainable. But as one other thing to throw in here before we go back over to you, we really liked Riley Leonard in our RotoViz rookie guide, sort of write up and rankings build. And it became clear that the NFL didn't like him. He wasn't going to be drafted into a situation that gave you much of a chance. I mean, we had to adjust for that. And you basically fall to the bottom or out of the rankings. But Leonard was interesting as a prospect. And he actually threw some really nice passes in this game, in part because Shane Steichen is just such a good play designer.
Yeah, he looked pretty decent. For people who are wondering where Anthony Richardson was, he still has the fractured orbital bone, or he's been on IR. He had like a freak accident, off the field accident, broke his like eye socket, and has been on IR, still on IR. I mean, I don't mean to like be mean or anything, but it might be a low-key positive if we get to see what Riley Leonard can do, because I think we're pretty I'm pretty skeptical of what Anthony Richardson's going to be able to do as a passer, but I think it would be really hard to bypass him in this situation given the draft capital and everything after Jones goes down. But if he's out, then you have the Leonard thing, and I don't know if his timeline will get sped up Richardson's, but for now, it looks like we will have Leonard. That will be interesting. He's got some mobility too, right? He had the rushing TD. You were talking about him in the prospect guide. He's got some mobility.
He's one of these guys with arm strength, with mobility. When you're talking about athleticism, it was strange that quarterbacks like Shook developed buzz and that Leonard did not. Now, Tyler Shook looked really good today, at least in some specific ways, right? The sort of rushing touchdowns that he gets, probably not indicative of him suddenly being like a viable NFL QB, but it was sort of Trevor Lawrence-ish, and that you like to see the competitiveness. Then in terms of the officiating, the Saints one had a very frustrating thing that we can get to in a minute. But yeah, I like Leonard for this offense. Obviously, he was specifically selected because they believe that he can give them some of the same things that Richardson, if he had won the job, or Jones with his mobility. I mean, you think about where Jones was coming into this game, where he's been very limited and hasn't looked mobile, but early in the season, that mobility, a big part of what a dynamic coordinator is able to do. When you're going into your first NFL game, and certainly when teams are able to prepare for him, it's going to be tough because you just don't have all of this play volume in the back of your mind. You don't have the ability to process things that happen at the NFL level, and it's just going to be brutal, right? But we have even seen with someone like Shedeur Sanders, who probably is still a pretty iffy prospect. And again, the Browns somehow managed to lose this game today. But the progression for Sanders from preseason to early, when he was forced into some work across the last couple of weeks, into today, where now granted you're playing against the Tennessee Titans, but is throwing these vertical passes, lighting everybody up, making the big plays, actually creating a quite exciting offense for the Cleveland Browns. It probably happens too late for the Colts to make the playoffs. They have a very difficult schedule going forward, and now just the math for them works out very poorly regardless. But I mean, Riley Leonard is the type of QB who could be one of these fun late in the season. If you're in super flex leagues, you can still pick somebody up, or you're in some kind of desperation situation. I don't think it's impossible that with the weapons that they have, Michael Pittman played a pretty good game today. Obviously, Alec Pierce can get deep. You have Josh Downs. And then with Jonathan Taylor, right, you're going to scheme some things around that. I think the Colts could still be interesting, even though almost certainly this is the death blow to their season.
Yeah, hopefully they can still be interesting for fantasy, but I think this is the death blow, as you said, for anything competitive. As you were talking about the call in the Saints game, I was trying to think of what it was. I couldn't think of it, and then I started thinking about the Isaiah Likely play again. And I want to ask you something, Sean. If you jumped in the air and caught a pass and landed 2 feet down and just held the ball in front of you and didn't take a third step and didn't move, and then 10 minutes later I came over and knocked the ball out, that's incomplete. That's incomplete. Never made an at comment of the game. You stood there. You never took a third step. That's an incompletion.
In our game that we're very excited about for tomorrow night, we think A.J. Brown is going to score 24 points and bring us back. The reason that we are down, beyond the fact that the Arizona Cardinals have – the Arizona Cardinals have to fire Jonathan Gannon. You can't be the head coach and have a defense like that and be a defensive guy and get fired. And not get fired, right? I mean, you should be fired after this game. The competitiveness, or we should say the non-competitiveness, with their ability to either tackle or understand where the gaps are. I mean, Blake Corum was essentially running a practice drill. Moving back around, one of the reasons we need that many points is because Chris Olave, who's actually not a great, I mean, he's a very average NFL receiver who wins with volume. The very first play of this game, he immediately beats his man. He's going to be open for 50, 60, whatever it was, yard touchdown. Tyler Shook throws the perfect pass because he is actually a gigantic, strong arm QB with some accuracy. I'm getting a little bit interested in him. Yeah, I feel like I could have been wrong on that. It's fun to watch Tyler Shook play. He throws the perfect vertical pass. It goes off of Chris Olave's fingers because 20 yards into this route, his defensive back grabs him and yanks him and costs him a step and a half. And if you don't get that flagrant defensive penalty, it's a 60-yard touchdown to start the game. And people are like, oh, all the rules favor the offense. We've put these rules in. The defenders can't do anything. It's because a place like that where everything is done perfectly. It's the perfect throw, right? You talked about how hard it is to complete these passes of 20 air yards. This is the perfect throw. It was the perfect route. It was flagrant cheating. The officials don't call anything. And we weren't going to get any fantasy points from a pass interference call, but at least it would have been the correct call, or what was a beautifully run offensive play.
It was a good play. I didn't see the whole. I missed that. I was watching it on the shortcuts. My favorite Olave play in this game was the later one where he stopped on his route and Shuck threw it downfield, and his defender just kept running and had an easy interception. But then you're like, who's going to go tackle that player? And he's like, well, I guess I got to get up and run it back because no one's coming after me. Because Olave not only just stopped and then watched the interception, he refused to go try to tackle the guy. He literally let him run it back, and then he ran parallel to him. Finally, when he was like, okay, the camera's panned over far enough to see me now, I have to move around. And Devon Vele runs all the way over from another part of the field and ends up making the tackle. I've never seen a receiver not try as hard as Chris Olave did on that play. But that's Chris Olave. He's got a little Jerry Jeudy in him. We've been talking about him like Jeudy since the offseason.
It's like, I've got some back spasms, man. Don't it's like I had stopped that play much earlier.
I mean, yeah, he's always got a back spasm or an ankle tweak or something. He seems to always he's got a little, Jalen Waddle in him. Waddle had a little ankle thing today, and then he played through it. He looked really walking around on the sideline, was really grimacing, and then he was back in there cutting hard a snap later. I'm like, I don't know what it is about every other receiver in the league, but apparently their ankles don't hurt quite as bad as yours, but they come back into the field, and I mean, I don't know. There's some of these guys
we certainly don't want to glorify the people who are going through the head injuries, but you think about some of the hits some of those guys were taking today, and then you watch Jalen Waddle and Chris Olave, and you're like, I don't feel like these guys are playing as hard.
They're just not tough. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to question the toughness of an NFL player, but there's a difference. There's a gap.
Thoughts on Tyler Shook?
I think he's great. I mean, I think he's fun. I was telling you that in the preseason. I thought he looked pretty good in the preseason. I thought he had that big arm, the ability to attack vertically. I've been saying it since last year, but Michael Penix, that you don't necessarily have to be that good if you can at least attack some of these spaces vertically. It opens up room underneath. I don't think Devin Neal's great, but he has a really good rushing day to day. And I do think it's tied to the fact that Shuck's capable of pushing it. You talk about that first pass early in the game. I think that sets a tone for what we see defensively from the Bucs, and it opens up space underneath. And I thought the Saints offense looked good. I said to you before the show that I watched that game, and I felt like Juwan Johnson and Olave, who I have a lot of, I thought their lines were going to be better. And then late in the game, they put Tyler Shuck's stats on the screen, and it was 13 for 20 He ends up 13 for 20, 144 yards. It was something like that. And I'm looking at it, I'm going, he only has, I think it was when he had like 11 completions. I'm like, he only has 11 completions. I guess all my guys have a lot fewer. Like for whatever reason, I thought he had like 20 completions, and these guys were at 5-6 catches, not 3-4
I'm glad
catches.
you were enjoying this game more than I was, because I was waiting for them to throw a pass. Like,
I don't know what I was thinking
going in. This was just pure Trevor Lawrence, right? 7 carries, 55 yards, 2 touchdowns.
That's the part of
his body around out there.
Shuck was getting out in the scrambles, and you're like, well, that was a successful play. It keeps the drive going. I think in my head, I'm thinking, okay, they're doing good things offensively. But yeah, it was all quarterback runs.
Killing the clock is what they were doing. Ben, it doesn't really show up, or at least, I mean, it shows up as poor efficiency. Bucky Irving, a lot of stuff today, but he has the 32-yard carry. I thought the Bucs probably should have used him more, but when you get right down to it, the 18 opportunities, about as many as he can probably handle. They just needed to block it up better, design it a little bit better, get him into space. The receiving touchdown was exciting. The big play was exciting. I don't understand why Rachaad White is still out there, even though, again, he was efficient today. Sean Tucker gets the other touchdown here.
Sean Tucker gets 1 carry in the whole first half, a failed 4th and goal, and then they give him a little bit of work in the third quarter. He rips off a big drive, and then he scores to end the drive. And just a reminder, this guy, I think it's like he's played more than 35% of the snaps like twice in his career, and he's scored like 40 points both times. It's absurd.
Yeah, you gotta get Rachaad White involved in the game. It's Ben, do you remember a time period? I put together, as Ibuka was ripping off this early start to the year, some of the different numbers showing that it actually wasn't guaranteed that someone with that type of a start would go on to be a star. It was pretty likely. The misses who had started fast like he didn't seem to be of the same kind of receiver, although, again, that kind of thing is very hindsight based, because you know that their NFL career went south when you're thinking, they don't seem like the same type of guy. Struggled to catch the ball again today. 2 for 9, 2 catches, 9 targets, just the 15 yards. Baker
This was a game
competed, but 14 for 30, he's not getting the help that he needs.
This was the game that I really felt like you've made that point a couple times, that we probably got out over our skis a little bit on Ibuka in the early start to his rookie year, and people saying he's going to be a clear superstar and all these things, that he does struggle a little bit at the catch point on some of these things. Really struggled with a very catchable target for a TD late that they needed. They end up losing this game because I don't know if you want to call it a drop, but he should have caught it. If he's a star, he's got to make that play. 2 catches on 9 targets, and several others were catchable as well. I got to give you the actual official stat on Sean Tucker, because people are like, what are you talking about? And I'm, nothing if not going off on tangents. Sean Tucker's career high in snap share, 44%. That was the game earlier this year where he had 140 yards from scrimmage. His second career high is 38% snap share. That was the game last year where he had 192 yards from scrimmage. He has another game at 37%, only 2 more over 30%. No more over 25%. He's played 5 games his whole career where they've given him 25% of the snaps. He's not even on the field. And yet the 2 times they've given him the most snaps, it's likely, I'm mixing correlation and causation here. They've given him more snaps because he's having a great game. And yet maybe try to give him the ball a little bit more.
No, we don't want that. We want everything to Bucky Irving, who, again, had a receiving touchdown, a 32-yard game. Then if you're Sean Tucker, you get a certain number of plays, and if you score touchdowns on those plays, then that's fine, but you've scored, right? You can't continue your drive when you've broken the big plays. You score touchdowns. That was your drive. Then you get to wait for the next game.
That's why your snap share can never get high enough, because you're scoring touchdowns every time you're on the field. It's absurd. It's absurd. But yeah, the how about the Bucs losing this game and falling to 7-6? They're actually like still going to win this terrible division. This division is a kind of a travesty, because I knew the Bucs were going to backslide a little this year. I picked the Falcons to win the division because I was like, Carolina can't be serious, and the Saints definitely aren't. But the Falcons also weren't serious, and so no one is. Carolina 7-6, the most hilarious 7-6 in the league, as we talk about every week. I kind of want them to win the division. Like, I just want them somehow. They're not going to, obviously, because they're going to finish 7-10. Like, there's no way they don't come back from the bye and lose all 4 games. I mean, it's like when they were 5-4, I was thinking about this. Like, the Jets started 0-7 or whatever. And then since then, the Jets are actually 3-3. Well, what if that was sequenced differently? What if they were 3-3 at one point this season? We'd be like, well, the Jets are a surprising 3-3 team, but they had their 7 straight losses earlier. The Panthers' 4 straight losses are coming. That's the point of the story.
The Panthers still have a lot of weaknesses, but they do play the Bucks twice in the last month.
Ooh.
And the first one is at Carolina, right? So we think about the Bucks. It did seem like the Bucks had a pretty good chance to win out, because their last 5 games were home against the Saints, home against the Falcons, at the Panthers, at the Dolphins. At the Dolphins, for a team the caliber of the Bucks, could be problematic, but getting guys like Godwin healthier, Mike Evans back, Jalen McMillan back, and then certainly Bucky Irving, you're looking at an offense that collapsed under the injuries, maybe taking back off and being one of the best in football, because Baker Mayfield has played well over the last several years and is one of the best competitors. He's basically Trevor Lawrence who can complete some passes, but because of all the drops, that wasn't necessarily the case today. They weren't able to extend drives. But when you think about the Bucks, you think about how weak the division is and how easy their schedule is. It is still certainly not guaranteed that they make it because of these 2 games of the Panthers, though the Panthers could easily win both.
That's what I mean, there's nothing I want more. I want the Panthers to win both. I don't know why I want that. They'll just get killed in the playoffs. It'll ruin the FFPC playoff challenge, because no one will pick a Panther, and then it'll actually be correct to have faded the Panthers. You know what? I changed my mind. I want the Bucks to win. John, I'm all over the place tonight. I've been, in case the listeners can't tell, I've been sick all week. It kind of hit me last Monday. Been getting a little bit better though, so I'm getting that like post sickness kind of energy rush while I'm still pounding Dayquil. But yeah, what else do we got? Got any more games, or we talked about like the only good teams, right?
Yeah, I think my experience of this day was just that it was fun, right? That we get this really competitive Green Bay Chicago game. That was one of the key games. That game delivered. We had this matchup between the Bills and the Bengals coming off of the win last week. Joe Burrow back. You have now this explosive offense. You have it in the snow. That game delivered. I thought that was a lot of fun. We were looking for some points from Jackson Smith and Jigba. He shows again that he's the NFL MVP. That game was a lot of fun. You have Houston finishing off the Chiefs dynasty at Arrowhead. That game, not very fun, but important, and one that was played hard, if very poorly, by both offenses.
We never talked about that game.
You and I did watch the Sunday night game this week, so we can dive in.
We should dive in. Andy Reid. Done?
You've been kind of wearing me down with this take, and I did sort of put that in my article.
Yeah, I mean, the declining the running into the punter from the plus 49, so he didn't have to go for it on 4th and 5 from the plus 44 was very funny. What was the other one that he did? There was something late. I can't remember now. He started going for it on 4th down in his own territory somewhat early, which was fun.
Yeah, that didn't work. You think about how good the Texans defense is.
Oh, the other thing I'm thinking about is Kelsey. It's not Andy Reid. It's the other washed up player. But Travis Kelsey doing is that the 3rd time this year that in a key moment that he's like handed the ball to a defender?
He's lost the entire season for them.
We've talked
Their
about
peripherals are still good, even with all of the losses. Their schedule has been brutally difficult. They are right there with all of these good teams. I rank the Texans, I think, 3rd overall. The Texans are that good. I think the Texans may be the AFC Super Bowl entrant. One of the things here, Ben, is that CJ Stroud goes 15 for 31, has a stretch of like 8 or 9 consecutive incomplete passes, and yet under a fierce pass rush with Chris Jones in his face constantly. He is holding just enough time to drop perfectly thrown passes into zones that have Jaden Higgins surrounded by 5 players, where Higgins comes down with it, picks up the first downs.
Such a good play by Stroud.
The offense isn't good, but it's reached the point of being competitive, and their defense is absolutely unreal.
I love this take that CJ Stroud is still good, because we've been big CJ Stroud fans since the rookie year. Didn't really know what happened last year. Obviously, he's not gotten back to the statistical level. They coach the team a certain type of way. CJ Stroud is still a very good quarterback. I love the take. I mean, he played really well in this game, even though the numbers don't necessarily say it. And the way that they ask him to play and the different things, he makes some impressive. You talk about guys that have the arm strength to attack areas downfield, open up zones underneath, open up some of the rushing stuff, which, I mean, Woody Marks is like whatever. Like he ends up scoring a touchdown on a play where he's wide open on a leak play, and he's been able to get into space that's been opened up for him by CJ Stroud attacking areas. And then on other plays, he just runs into his lineman and gets nothing. Like I think Woody Marks is pretty bad, like really pretty bad, but I'm probably overstating that.
Yeah, I think that he's like the Chiefs backs, where if you don't have NFL players, you can put him on the field. I think he's better than the Chiefs backs, just to be clear. He's not as good as Brashard Smith. Brashard Smith had 1 touch. He went for 7 yards. He immediately was benched so they could go back to Kareem Hunt.
That was so crazy. As soon as that play happened, I was like, I wonder if you need more of that in your offense. At least that's obvious. And then they just take him off the field and they don't give him the ball again.
But the play when Woody Marks scores is an all-out blitz that Stroud is able to beat. I mean, that's the way that play is supposed to work. An NFL quarterback is supposed to make that play. Still not the easiest thing under the all-out blitz. You got to get that ball over. We saw quarterbacks all day today not be able to get the ball over rushing defensive linemen. Some of those end up going for picks. Some of them go for pick sixes. He executes the touchdown. I mean, it's as impressive a 15 for 31 as you're going to ever see. He has the 3 sacks. Some of those sacks created difficult situations for him, but because their defense was so extraordinary, the Chiefs just had to unleash Chris Jones and the blitz over and over again because they had to win the game with defense. CJ Stroud made it so that did not work. The other thing that made it so it didn't work is what you were talking about with Travis Kelce laddering the ball to the opponents. We again talk about how extraordinary the Houston defense was in this game. I mean, Jalen Petrie makes one of the greatest interceptions of all time, where he bats the ball into the air, makes a great move to get a hand on it. The ball is up there. There are multiple people in between. He manages to circle all the way back around everything that's happening, pick the ball off on the other side of it. Houston defense, I mean, for all the frustrations with how borderline some of the plays are,
they're good.
I mean,
they're good defensively.
They're a force, an absolute force. And it's again a little bit CJ Stroud is not quite where Jalen Love is, and maybe it's more that he doesn't have the offensive scheme around him that Jordan Love has, because he does have some players. I mean, this is a game where Nico Collins is able to get that 53-yard gain. He still has Collins out there. I mean, we say this every week, and it sounds kind of weird, and probably, maybe to an extent, we really are just trying to prop up Jaden Higgins. But I do think that in a different situation, Jaden Higgins at this point would already be a star. He was the guy involved in the play where we had the replay assist giving the false information, and then the play is like fake challenged and overturned. But that was a nice play from Higgins. They've got pieces here. I mean, they've got enough pieces that guys like Jalen Nola and Christian Kirk are fighting for snaps. They have Dalton Schultz playing well.
I think if they had an explosive back, it's a lot like the KC point. Think if they had Breece Hall dropped in there, or like, I mean, it is a team that, like, if you had a healthy Joe Mixon, it would be a pretty big upgrade to have. And we've never been huge fans of Joe Mixon. People, I think that he's probably a little better than we do, but a capable back of being whatever. I mean, he's got size, he's got a certain amount of agility, and can be a league average efficient player in the situation he's in. I think the backs they have are below average in the situation that they're in, but What about
we talked a little bit about the officiating, right? And I do think it's important to know. We talked recently about the Tristan Wirfs holding call that was just a complete phantom play. Shouldn't have been called, changed the game. I'm in no way saying, I think at this point I've made my case against the Chiefs strongly enough. People aren't going to accuse me too much of homer bias on it. And I do think the Texans deserve to win this game. But this game would have been very different if you don't get a complete phantom defensive pass interference when the Chiefs had forced a punt on the drive that the Texans scored the touchdown on in the first half, and simultaneously have Harrison Butker missing a field goal, right? Everything about that changes the way the game would have been played in the second half. The Chiefs did dominate the first sort of 20 minutes of the second half. More officials in different places so that you have less that you have to see. We're not saying to call everything for the offense or everything for the defense, or you have to call all these pass interferences, or you shouldn't call this, or you shouldn't call that. But there are just too many flags that are clearly wrong, and they're not close. They're not borderline, right? Pass interference is difficult. I mean, pass interference is very, very hard. But the ones that are easy,
make it all challengeable,
because they are huge leverage plays in the game.
Make it all challengeable. You're just asking, like, what do you do? More officials, whatever. Make it all challengeable. Let coaches challenge everything, including calls. It'd be super easy. I mean, I just think it's like that's a very, very straightforward answer to this question, especially things like pass interference, which we're not going to get because they tried for 1 year and it didn't work. And we know that the refs were essentially trying to make it more confusing than it is so that they didn't have to deal with this into the future because their egos are so fragile. I mean, it was an absurd, fit that they threw and whatever. The NFL has a referee problem for sure. The referees have a lot of power. They had the lockout the 1 year, and we got the Fail Mary and everything. I mean, they don't want to not give the referees what the referees want, but the referees could be better, absolutely. But they're not. The referees themselves are not that interested in improving, apparently. So here we are. What about Rashee Rice? You mentioned obviously the big hit. Kind of struggled to bring in several catchable balls, and then he had the really bad fourth down drop late that's right on his hands. You have to have. Was he just concussed? Or this is a little bit like the Ibuka thing. You've mentioned this before as well, that people want Rashee Rice probably to be a more dominant number one receiver than he actually is at the catch point.
Yeah, he's had a fantastic fantasy season, right? And he was a huge piece for them because their offense is built around the catch and run. And for all of the issues that Andy Reid has had, he can still design a passing offense. He can still get those guys open. You see Rashee Rice do some of these things where he runs out into the zone. You get a little bit of adjustment. He has, 99th percentile, potentially athleticism in terms of making some of these sudden moves. You look at the numbers that he had coming into the NFL. He was graded by Next Gen as a much better receiver prospect than the NFL thought he was. Certainly a lot of things like that have come to fruition. It's still an issue for the Chiefs that they don't have a real receiver. I mean, it seems crazy to suggest that someone like Rice, who's been putting up such big fantasy numbers, is not the type of receiver that you can build an NFL passing game around, but he's just not remotely like someone like a Jackson Smith and Jigba or a Justin Jefferson, obviously having a bad season himself, a Jamar Chase, those types of guys.
Or T. Higgins, like the guys further down the list, like T. Higgins, who's the one that we always have talked about that they didn't draft that year. When was that the year they took Clyde Edwards-Helaire? They could have, we've talked about they could have taken Jonathan Taylor. They also could have taken T. Higgins. I mean, it doesn't have to be Chase or JSN or somebody on that level, but even somebody on a little bit of a lower level.
And I don't think that Xavier Worthy is either. But one of the reasons that I would encourage any listeners who, are still on the fence or still have some interest in the future, much less expensive Xavier Worthy prices, or that Worthy does a lot of things and has the potential to do a lot of things for the Chiefs offense that Rice probably can't do. Now, make contested catches, I'm not saying is one of them, right? But being able to get open downfield, create space for the offense, create space for the underneath guys. One of the reasons that Travis Kelce has put up pretty good numbers this season is because that's all that the Chiefs can do when you have no running game. And I mean, we see the play today where, I mean, Tyquan Thornton has been kind of interesting this season. The numbers that you see for Patrick Mahomes in this game don't remotely tell how he played. It's much more a testament to the Texans defense and how flagrantly the Chiefs skill position players let him down. You have the Kelsey play you referenced. You have all of these drops from Rashee Rice. It really is incumbent upon them to get Worthy more involved, who has been getting open, is making some plays down the field. He has the deep pass today. This was one of the first nice deep passes we've seen from Patrick Mahomes, and Tyquan Thornton isn't able to bring it in. Now, it wasn't a super easy catch, right? Again, you get some contest at the end of it. You wouldn't necessarily expect Thornton to make that catch, knowing some of his background and what some of his struggles have been. But that ball is on his hands. If you want to win that game as the Kansas City Chiefs and go ahead and make the playoffs, Thornton has to make that play. So we're still kind of right back at the beginning with Kansas City, where if you're going to have these weaknesses on the offensive line, even though some of the advanced numbers for their offensive line, especially in the pass protection, are quite good, right? But so much of that is because Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL, maybe by far, in terms of neutralizing whatever the opponent is doing from a pass rush perspective. And certainly the way Andy Reid is scheming these quick passes when they need, and then Mahomes either extends and throws or scrambles. It all works back around to the fact that Rashee Rice is a pretty limited receiver, but is fantastic at what he does well. Now, there's a huge place for that in the NFL, right? Almost every team would love to have a Rashee Rice on their team who is limited, but is sensational at their actual job. The problem for the Chiefs comes in when you need this true receiver who can win on different routes at different levels, different areas of the field, and that Mahomes could rely on to do some of those things. They simply haven't had that since Tyreek Hill. They were able to use Kelsey a little bit like that early once Hill was gone. We talk about how Kelsey's peripherals have fallen off the cliff. One of the interesting things about his after catch metrics this year is they've actually bounced back significantly. But certainly folks who have watched the Chiefs throughout the year and looked at their struggles on a game by game basis, the fact that his ability to, and we're not talking about contested catches, just that short area catch that used to be automatic for Kelsey, those go off of his hands just all the time.
Can I ask you what the after the catch stuff, because I haven't looked at it, is it like the missed tackles force stuff at all, or are you just talking about yak?
I'm talking about, the broken tackles and the forced missed tackles are way back up.
They are back up too.
Yeah.
Oh. Because a lot of the yak plays for him this year have just been like leak plays where he's not guarded and he just catches the ball and runs to daylight.
But he certainly doesn't feel like someone that a defense has to account for.
Yeah, I mean, at all. But I guess if the forced missed tackles and stuff are back up, then that's pretty nice to see. Yeah, he's been. I think it's time for him to retire. I mean, clearly, I think it's time for Andy Reid to retire. I think you need a whole new offense. Got to get rid of Matt Nagy. You don't just promote from within. Bring in an entire new, young, offensive-minded coach to work with Mahomes. You need that receiver that you talked about. You need an actual running back on this team. Obviously, they've been able to win. The genius of Mahomes is and Reid as well, and all these guys is they've been able to win Super Bowls without perfect rosters at all. But it does feel like we're at a point where the entire league's defensive blueprint is designed around trying to stop what the Chiefs originally were doing so well. What Mahomes was able to do throwing deep to Tyreek Hill and just broke everyone's brains. Like, well, you can't throw for 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns this easily. We have to prevent you from doing that. And I mean, it is a copycat league. I mean, that obviously Mahomes is not the first guy to ever throw downfield, but it did feel a little bit like tiger proofing golf courses back in the day. It's like we're gonna Mahomes proof our defensive schemes a little bit here for the modern NFL. I think in this era right now, you need to find answers and then have him play within a little bit of a different structure going forward. That's what I want to see. You said the Texans ended the Chiefs dynasty earlier. I think that's one I would push back on pretty hard. They are probably going to miss the playoffs this year. I don't think it's anywhere close to the end of a dynasty. I think it's, which I don't think is what you were saying either, obviously, but like in the very literal sense. But it's the end of the run where they've been going to the Super Bowl every single year. It emphasizes how absurd that run is. It emphasizes how absurd the Patriots run was, where they won their division every year for 20 years, how hard it is for a team to be that good every single year for that long. These really big dynasties that we've had in the last 20 to 30 years in the sport. For the whole time the Patriots did that, their division never rose up. This division has gotten better. The Denver Broncos are good. The Chargers are good. They went and hired good coaches. They got good players, and they're better. The Chiefs have a tougher road ahead of them. They're not – I mean, I'm not minimizing what the Patriots did, but the fact is that for close to 20 years, there wasn't a real threat. There was a little stretch where the Jets were good under Rex Ryan, and they beat the Patriots a few times, and I don't think they ever won the division, but they made the AFC championships a couple of times or whatever. That was about the best that division conjured for 20 years, was that little stretch of Jets teams. This division is good right now, and so their dynasty is going to look different than the Patriots, and we don't have to compare them. I mean, I know a lot of people be like, oh, the Chiefs aren't going to win their division. They're not going to make the playoffs. That never happened in Brady's prime. It doesn't change anything. The Chiefs dynasty, having one season in the middle of it where they don't make the postseason when they're in a transition year, Travis Kelce is literally giving away games. I mean, handing over the ball for a 99-yard interception return against the Jaguars, handing over the ball to end this game on, a potential game defining drive at the end. And, he needs to move on. And I think it's time for Andy Reid to move on. I think a lot of the stuff has gotten stale, and the usage, the lack of understanding of using Brashard Smith, the lack of understanding of where to get, it's just always gadget players and everything. I don't know. I think they need to go a different direction.
I guess for me, that would be, and I don't mean this in a bad way, that the Chiefs have somehow are ruined. I mean, they're going to go down as the second best team probably in football history, right? The second best, group of players, player, coach, what have you. There's nothing to be. It's one of the greatest runs of all time, what they've done. But I do think that part is over for the reasons that you mentioned, which is that they would have to move on from Reid, which they probably won't do given the level of success he's had. And in fairness to him, I mean, he had a season of collapse like this with the Eagles, and the Eagles felt like it was time to move on, and the Eagles have done very well since, right? And in some ways, that's a blueprint for what Kansas City could do. And yet, Reid wasn't done at that point. But so many of the things, both with the team construction, and you think about them not being willing to give up the pick for Breece Hall, and yet Harrison Butker, either the highest or one of the highest paid kickers, has really struggled, cost them potentially the game today because of all the downstream effects of that miss and what it meant for the game environment late.
It's a great point.
The concern I would have is just exactly what you mentioned, which is that the Denver Broncos are going to be better next year than they were this year. The Los Angeles Chargers are going to be much, much, much better next year than they were this year. The Houston Texans and the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be better next year than they are this year. The teams that have faded some, with the Ravens and the Bengals, when you have Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson, there are very easy paths for them to be. I mean, obviously during this stretch, Joe Burrow was the one guy who could knock him out of it. And if you assume that the Bengals have new coaching next year, and maybe that's a bad assumption, but Joe Burrow with his weapons could be a juggernaut type of team, but certainly someone that's difficult to reckon with. And then you think about Josh Allen still being there. The Bills are not a very good team this year, but when you have Josh Allen, you always have a shot. And just look at him again today. I mean, he's the sort of the superhuman player. And then we haven't even talked about the Patriots. Now, one of the things as I work through this article, it's just shocking in terms of the way that I put things together and what I really believe are the contending teams. It's a pretty big group of teams, right? Because we talk about the haves and the have-nots. There aren't super teams this year in the way that there have often been in the past. Now, I do think some teams like the Texans and the Packers and the Rams are very, very good. But the level of teams that are interesting stretches 17, 18, 19 deep. I mean, you have teams like the Bucks and the Bears who are pretty deep into that group. When you think about the contending teams going into this week, the Texans had already played 10 such games. They're now to 11. The Chiefs will be at 10. The New England Patriots are at 2. So the things that the Patriots have done are less impressive within the context of the schedule. I think everybody knows the schedule is weak. I'm not sure it's that easy to convey just how weak it's actually been. And yet Drake May is having probably the greatest vertical passing season in NFL history. It's certainly one when you combine the numbers and the eyeball test, where Drake May is doing impossible things in terms of downfield accuracy. The Patriots are going to be much better next season. When you think about all of these teams that we can look at and just think of the trajectory that they're in, and maybe the Patriots will win the Super Bowl this season, right? Just because they played a weak schedule doesn't mean they couldn't continue to improve and just benefit from kind of where they are from a win-loss perspective, play well in the playoffs. So many of these teams are in the portion of their trajectory that the Chiefs were in with Alex Smith and Andy Reid. I mean, we're talking about these teams making a jump. The Kansas City is going to be put under a ton of pressure to match just to be good again next year. I think they will do it, right? But the time period where they would coast to the playoffs and then have all of these exotic game plans in the playoffs where the defense would play well, where Patrick Mahomes not only played perfectly, but had the mystique to go with it. I mean, those days are over.
Yeah. I mean, it certainly seems like it this year. I mean, this is the year where it feels like, you talk about the Harrison Butker thing. It's fascinating because a kicker struggling to this degree. I mean, I don't know what causes kickers to struggle. I know that some of the really good ones seem to hone their craft well enough to maintain consistency year over year on those things. He gets paid a lot of money. I'm not suggesting he's not practicing enough in the offseason, but I am suggesting that he maybe wasn't practicing enough in the offseason because he's like, hey, we have Patrick Mahomes. They're going to be in the Super Bowl again this year, whatever. Things are going to work out. I just think it's representative of something that's sort of happening in a lot of places when you have Patrick Mahomes. And we've talked about it. It's a little bit, Mahomes hasn't been perfect, but it's a little bit interesting that he's had one of his better years recently. He's ran more. He's been willing to take on more contact and put more on his shoulders. He's played a really good season this year. And I mean, he's getting no help around him. So anyway, the Chiefs, the Andy Reid thing, I think you're right. They shouldn't force him out. I just wanted to clarify. Like, I wasn't saying that they should force him out necessarily or whatever, but you were talking about he had a year like that with the Eagles. He's 67 now. He turned 68 in March. Like, my thinking is, like, how much longer is he going to do it? He's a large human. It's a taxing career. You have to move around and you have to travel a lot and all these things. And I guess it wouldn't surprise me if he wanted to kind of step away as well at some point. I'm not sure. That's sort of speculative.
Yeah, and just to kind of reiterate one of the things that we talk about from time to time, and almost just from an open-ended perspective, say that I'm surprised I don't understand, right? We wanted Brashard Smith to be more from a fantasy perspective, and he hasn't been. And that's obviously not going to be relevant at all in 2025. He's not going to be a fantasy scorer. But to see what he has brought on the plays when he's been allowed to play and to know what they have otherwise. It's been frustrating to watch Kareem Hunt this season, and yet even then, when it's Kareem Hunt, you're like, this is bad, but Kareem Hunt is doing some things. When they came out today with Isaiah Pacheco and gave him some carries to start the game, like, this is capitulatory. This is not serious.
Yeah, but so was like hiring Matt Nagy back to be your offensive coordinator. Like, everything they do is not serious. It's crazy. Not trading for Breece Hall, by the way, Andy Reid signed a 5-year, $100 million contract extension last April 2024, keeping him around through 2029. Everything I'm saying is completely wrong based on the fact that he clearly wants to keep coaching. He just signed a $20 million annual deal for 5 more years.
I don't know the specifics of that contract, but given the fact that the Chiefs somehow, as like multiple Super Bowl winners, tend to receive Fs on like the quality of their locker room and their weight room, and I assume like the brunch spread for the players, it seems paying a coach most of the rest of a $100 million contract to go a different direction, probably not going to happen.
Probably not going to happen. It is. It made him the highest paid coach in the NFL. So I guess we got a few more years of this. We're going to be talking about the stealing bananas for a few more years. But yeah, Chiefs lose, have to win out, and get help now, or they're done. They're 6
one of the things
7.
that was surprising to me when I went through the pick every game exercise was there was even a scenario where they could win out, including this game, and miss the playoffs. Winning out from this point and making it is going to be very tough.
Yeah, they've lost 4 of their last 5. They started 0-2, and you're like, okay, you start 0-2, you lose that game in Brazil, you lose the game to the Eagles the next week by 3, and then you lose that game to Jacksonville. They won 5 of 6, but they lost that game in Jacksonville with the 100-yard interception return that completely flipped that game off Travis Kelce's hands. And so they're still only 5-3 at that point. And since then, they have lost 4 of 5. 3 games on the road, at Buffalo, at Denver, at Dallas, and then here they lose at home. It's their first home loss since week 2. But I mean, to lose 4 of 5 right now when you had the 2 losses early and you weren't really ahead of things in your win-loss schedule, you were 5-3. You had to get results at this point in your season. They know that as well as anyone. They've had seasons where they've struggled for periods of time, but then they go out and they win a ton of games in a row.
Well, Ben, would you say, I mean, again, you're trying to win. And I actually think that the Chiefs have done, I think it's pretty extraordinary that they have Patrick Mahomes and they've built this defense, right? We talk about all the things that they could be doing better, and it's easy to overlook that they have built one of the best defenses in football while they have the best quarterback in football. And that's what makes it more absurd. It's absolutely crazy that a team with Patrick Mahomes and one of the best defenses can be 6-7. They're going to win out. I mean, you can just mark that down. They're going to win out. The games against the Broncos and the Chargers are at home. I mean, they should have won this game.
They're going to win this game.
They're going to be 10-7, and they're going to miss the playoffs, but they're going to point to the schedule, and they're going to point to some of these fluky plays and even some of the bad calls. I mean, this is the second week in a row they got a ton of bad calls against them, and they're going to say, we were unlucky. This was unfair. It shouldn't have happened this way. Our plan worked, and not do the appropriate self-evaluation in the offseason because – I mean, you got to take responsibility for the things that you did wrong as opposed to note the things that you were unlucky about.
Well, and I mean, one of the things that I should acknowledge again is I'm dishing, I think, a lot of criticism here. We've talked about them in the offseason when we do the like over-under stuff, win total over-under. We've talked about sometimes that they always have a tough schedule. So it always comes out at like 11.5. And the thing that I like to point out is since Patrick Mahomes took over as a quarterback in 2018, they've won 12-plus games every season, other than finally in 2023 that stopped. They went 11-6. They won the Super Bowl that year. They won 4 straight postseason games. They went 15-6 overall that year in 21 games. Every year in the Patrick Mahomes era, they've figured out ways to win a ton of games. Most of those seasons were back in the, or not most of them, but the first few were back in the 16-game season era, and they won 12-plus games every year. And now that we have a 17th game, I mean, they went 15-2 last year. And much has been made about how good their record was in the one-score games last year and how they've lost all the one-score games this year. And that's the other point. I mean, if you want to defend Andy Reid to a lot of the things that we're saying, I mean, you could on all these grounds. And one of the big ones is they lose another game here. Or did they lose 20-10 tonight? Did they end up losing by 2 possessions? Every other loss this year has been 1 possession, but even this one, it was more or less 1 possession without those 2 interceptions.
Yeah. So we'll see. They're going to be very, very good. They do have that 3rd round pick that they didn't trade for Breece Hall. So especially now that it's going to be a little bit earlier in the draft, I expect that to be the one that launches them back to the playoffs next season. Then the Jacksonville Jaguars, they get through a game here where they don't have to face Daniel Jones, but the Jaguars, like the Texans, are a rising powerhouse, a team that is getting it done without. Now, it's kind of fascinating here, right? Because they gave up like everything in this year's draft and everything in next year's draft for Travis Hunter, who's not even a part of the team and wasn't playing that well when he got injured. And yet they are 9-4. They are physically manhandling teams. You actually had Trevor Lawrence, I mean, still just 17 for 33, but he looked fantastic in today's game, throwing on the run, darts, averages over 8 yards per pass, throws the 2 touchdowns, scrambles again. Travis Etienne, sadly, but happily for him, is back almost to the college level in terms of what he looks like. We even saw Brian Thomas make some contested catches today. You get Brian Thomas going, Jacoby Myers scores yet another touchdown for them. You think about where they will be next season, even if Hunter is merely good, which is probably the most likely trajectory for him. The fact that they haven't even really been able to get this offense going and yet are now one of the AFC's heavyweights and a team like the Texans, where you don't want to play them because of how physical they are. There's not a ton to say here in this game, given the injury, but Jacksonville also a rising threat to everybody. I think the team that comes out of the AFC is going to be a surprise. Now, it's not going to be a surprise from the perspective of the teams that make the playoffs are going to be good teams, and it could be anybody. But it's probably still, I mean, at this point, it's much more likely that we get a fun, new, fresh team than we have some of the old storylines repeated. And for Bills fans, they're like, we want that storyline to keep going until we actually get the Super Bowl victory. There's no Chiefs level team. There's no Bills level team, even though the Bills obviously have had trouble in the championship game. There's no peak Eagles team, but this may be setting up for the best and deepest group of teams for the playoffs. I mean, I'm tempted to say NFL history. I mean, I've watched a lot of seasons at this point. You always have teams. It's really too bad that we're going to have a team in from the AFC North and in from the NFC South. There are going to be teams that miss that would be fantastic additional entrants into the playoffs. But those other teams, you're going to have 6 just absolute Super Bowl contenders from both divisions.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. That's what I was going to say. You mean from both conferences? Both
conferences, yes.
Because I was going to say to you, you said there's going to be some random team from the AFC. I said, why wouldn't there be from the NFC? I mean, I feel like we may get that year a few years back where we got the Rams and Bengals in the Super Bowl. It was like, where did this come from? I feel like we're headed toward that this year. But you mentioned BTJ. I do want to note the one little thing I had on Jacksonville was 2 of his 3 catches came out of the slot. It was nice to see. He had a good vertical catch out of the slot early. Then he had a play on the boundary, and then they hit him with a slot fade in the third quarter as well. Got him downfield 3 times, and he had the boundary catch was a nice one-handed catch. He had a really only 3 catches, but 3 really impactful vertical passes. So that was cool to see for him. But no, I mean, as far as everything you were saying about the playoffs, totally agree. And I mean, it could be someone who, like you said, like the Bills, who hasn't got there yet, or like, the Lions were in it last year. They were the 1 seed last year. They're going to be more of a dark horse this year, but they could wind up being the one that actually comes out of it. It's going to be a free-for-all, and that's super exciting. I think the playoffs are going to be just incredibly fun this year.
Yeah, should be the best year for the playoffs, should be the best year for playoff contests. In between now and then, we have the fantasy playoffs, weeks 15, 16, and 17. Anyone who needs points tonight, like we do in your FFPC finals, good luck for that. Anybody who needs points to get across the line and qualify for your fantasy playoffs, good luck from us at Stealing Bananas. Get those points, get across that line. We're rooting for you. We love you guys. We'll talk to you soon.